presentation. And we have put together this solar discussion as a result of an interest shown on the sandwich board. And tonight, Peggy Longley is going to be our host, so I will let her take it over from here and do the introductions.
Okay, so I was just calling Kim, and I've been talking to him today, so I know that he has.
He's on.
Oh, okay. I didn't see him come on.
He just arrived.
Hi, Kim. Welcome. We just went through some of the participants and why they're here and get some of their ideas. As far as 2 weeks ago, we had part one, which was neighbor to neighbor with a bit of an emphasis on off-grid solar, because that was what was written to the sandwich board with some interest by several people. And so that was very good because we heard from our neighbors who had actually built their own, who have had it installed. Tonight, the attention will be more on on-grid or grid-tied, which is a more accurate term. So you'll be hearing grid-tied more. That was kind of a new term for me in the last few months. With a brief comparison to off-grid solar up front, so we can really understand the differences. With us tonight are two local experts that we're very, very happy to have. Sandra Jones is the Executive Director of the Plymouth Area Renewable Energy Initiative, or PARE. A lot of people in this area have heard about them. There's a very big fan club. She's also the manager of New Hampshire Solar Shares, which is in partnership with the New Hampshire Electric Co-op. PARE was founded in 2004 to help the Plymouth area community reduce fossil fuel energy consumption and produce renewable energy. PARE is best known for their volunteer neighborhood solar thermal energy raisers, like the old barn raisers, that took place in Plymouth and Sandwich between 2005 and 2011. The efforts in Sandwich was led by PARE board member Carl McNall, who we've referred to, whom we greatly miss. PARE is a membership organization that also provides energy education workshops, such as Button Up New Hampshire, and installs 10 solar PV installations every year on members' homes or local nonprofits. Kim,
So, Peggy, 1 sec. Hey, Dick, Dick Devins, would you please turn off the screen sharing?
oh,
Screen sharing, let's see, where's screen sharing?
Oh my God, I don't know.
You are screen sharing, stop share. There we go.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Kim, I see. Of Phrase Electric, who a lot of us know, has been providing electrical services to businesses and residents throughout New Hampshire since 1991. He will be semi-retiring this year and will be doing some consulting and warranty work. If you need service on a solar installation or new solar installation, Kim can refer you to other solar contractors. Again, feel free to raise the flag hand, or as Catherine explained, or enter your questions and comments on the chat board, and we will try and call on each of you. We would prefer to take just a couple of questions during each topic, but if you can leave most of your questions for the end, I think it will go a little bit smoother. So now we'll let me just turn this off. Now we'll turn it over to Sandra and Kim. And the first topic for discussion is to give us a quick review of residential grid-tied versus off-grid solar systems. And I think, Sandra, you'll go first.
I am. I'm going to bring up a graphic here that Peggy found. Kim's going to go into more detail about this. We're going to kind of take turns on talking about various topics. Hello, everybody, by the way. So I understand that the last time you met, you talked about off-grid. And this particular session is about on-grid or grid-tied. It means that your solar system is tied to the electrical system of your home, and it's tied to the electrical lines that come into your house. And so essentially, when you are on grid, you don't need a battery system like you need for off grid. When you're off grid, all the power feeds the battery and the battery then feeds your electrical load. In the case of on grid, all your solar feeds your electrical panel, and what your house isn't using at the time the solar is being generated, it exports onto the grid. So your grid is your battery. Kim, do you want to do a little more explanation on off grid versus on grid and pros and cons? You may be muted.
Oh, here we go. Hello?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Probably the biggest thing between the two is the cost. The off-grid involves batteries, which can easily double the price, makes it more complicated. With off-grid, you're always going to be starving for power, probably using a generator a lot more. I usually use a rule of thumb. If you have if it's going to cost you $20,000 or $30,000 to go grid tied on a new home, I would go grid tied and then do solar, as opposed to doing off grid. I mean, there comes a point where, you know, if you're so far out in the woods that it's cost prohibitive to get grid tied, then yes, you would do off grid. And some people can are very successful with off grid. They can get by with very little power. But if you've lived with grid for your entire life, it's quite a lifestyle change to go off grid.
And Kim, earlier before you came on, someone was asking about battery backup power. And if you are already grid tied and you're looking for needing to add backup power to your house, batteries is an expensive way to go. Like Kim mentioned, it doubles the prices of a solar installation. So if the main reason you want batteries is to have backup power for those 5 or 6 days a year, if that the grid goes down, it is an expensive way to go. And most people do end up going with a generator. As much as we don't like fossil fuel energy, it is the less expensive way to go. Do you want to just talk, Kim, for a second about the backup power interest that people have on this conversation?
So just let me interrupt 1 second. This is Lenway. Hey, Sandra, did you want to put that graphic up that you had earlier that we saw that shows the grid and the non-grid? Because now we just have a house.
Oh, you don't have the off-grid on-grid?
No,
No.
we just have a picture.
Oh, good. Gee. Okay, then hold on a second here. Where'd it go? All right, I don't know where that one is, but can you see this one? Can you see the diagram now?
No, all we had to do is have a picture with the solar panels on it. A
I'm
colonial
glad
house
you
with
mentioned this. All right, I'm going to stop the share here. Try this again.
There you are.
Okay. So this is a grid tied. I don't have the off grid now. That diagram has seemed to have disappeared on me. I was looking at it the whole time I was talking. But essentially, when you're looking at this diagram, the batteries go in the after the solar energy meter. The solar is charging the batteries, and then the batteries is feeding your electrical panel that then covers the appliances in your house. So there's no grid here at all. You don't have your power grid, your utility power grid, and your meter. You aren't connected to the grid at all. So just back to the question about whether backup power is right for you. You know, do I install solar for the purpose of adding backup power to my house? And I just wanted Kim to elaborate on that question we had earlier a little bit more.
Well, you were right. Most people, if you just look at the numbers, the generator is probably the less expensive upfront way to go. However, if you stretch it out for maybe 10 years, generators have fuel costs and have maintenance costs which are maybe $300 or $400 a year. So 10 years, you spend another $3,000 or $4,000. You're probably going to spend $7,000 to $10,000 to install it. Batteries are probably going to cost you, of course, it depends on how much stored power you want, anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000, but it's more than just the cost of batteries. That does qualify for the 26% federal tax credit, so that brings the number down a little bit. By the time you add the cost of operating a generator, it gets the cost a lot closer, but it's not really apples to apples because you have a lot more available power with a generator than you probably do with a battery system. And again, it depends on how big you go. But you know, I've done jobs where people have generators and batteries. So you know, everybody's a little different on their look at it. But batteries are coming pretty popular. I have a lot of inquiries about it. I've only done a couple jobs myself, but I've referred to a couple installers that do a lot of batteries, and they're staying pretty busy with it. So it's coming. The price should be coming down, and you know, certainly something to keep your eye on. But there still are a lot of people doing it now.
And one thing along those lines, the New Hampshire Electric Co-op is looking at having a battery program for New Hampshire Electric Co-op members. And they are working on a system where they would provide the batteries, the maintenance, and the installation. And it would be a smart system where they would be able to discharge your batteries to help the grid, and also that batteries would be there for you when the grid went down. It's kind of a complicated program, but it's something a number of utilities across the country are doing. And they originally had a contract with Tesla, and unfortunately Tesla backed out of that. So the program kind of fell apart, and that was about 6 months ago. So they're looking to do it again, but they're also kind of watching the market and waiting for just the right time to offer this program to members. So I think you'll see them hopefully come down in price and be more opportunities to use the batteries more easily. I want to switch over to what we wanted to cover early on, especially for people that are new to solar. I want to talk about the preliminary steps for solar installation.
Okay, so we're still getting a funny view of your screen. We're not getting your full screen. We're getting the title page and everything else.
Okay, are you seeing sample Pathfinder report now?
It's in the middle, but there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
That got it. Thanks.
Okay, so you all saw the picture of the house with the solar panels on it. I didn't realize everyone was looking at that. But what I want to do is kind of step back for a minute and talk about what a solar installer does when someone is interested in installing solar on their home. And every solar installer does this a little differently, but I wanted to give you an example of how the Plymouth Renewable Energy Initiative does it. So this is a home in central New Hampshire. They're interested in solar. They know they have a good sunny roof, and so they want to put solar panels on it. So this is I think about a 45, it's a steeper pitch. And so what we do is we go to the house and we take what we call a solar Pathfinder reading, and we measure the roof to determine how many panels fit on the roof. And then we download the Pathfinder reading, the direction of the roof, the tilt of the roof, and the number of panels that will fit on the roof. And it gives us a amount that of solar energy that roof can produce for the family. And so if you look under actual shaded AC energy, a solar installer can get pretty close to what your roof has the capacity, solar-wise, space-wise, to generate to meet your electric bill. So in this case, 14 panels could fit on this garage roof, and the azimuth is 230, so that's not, true south. Ideally, you want 195, which is 15 degrees west of magnetic 180 for the absolute perfect solar location. But 230 is within a good range to still get good solar gain. And this actually, the tilt was 35. 35 is perfect for a solar installation on a roof. So in this case, what we do is we talk with the homeowner about how many kilowatt hours their roof can produce, and we compare it to their electric bill. So commonly anywhere, most New Hampshire homeowners, their kilowatt hour usage in an annual basis is anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000. We're seeing it creep up because more and more people are adding electric car chargers, they're adding mini splits, or adding electric water heaters, heat pump water heaters. So they're going along the lines of what they call electrical, beneficial electrification. And that's a term that utilities use for encouraging people to choose electricity over fossil fuel generated options for space heating and water heating. And so in this case, the family used about 6,000 kilowatt hours, very energy efficient electricity wise home. It needed some insulating, but I'll get to that in another workshop. So it was absolutely perfect that their garage roof was the perfect size for their electricity needs. So the one thing I wanted to mention is the solar installer, when they come out or after they get back to the office, will give you an idea of what the TSRF is. And what that stands for is the total solar resource factor. And to see it at 92% in New Hampshire is a very good resource factor. This particular house had absolutely no shading. And the state, someone mentioned they wanted to learn about incentives. The state of New Hampshire requires that your house be 80% or higher in order to get the solar rebate from the state. The solar rebate is 20 cents a watt, maxed out at $1,000. And I'll talk more about that later. But they want to see this total solar resource factor at 80% or above, or they don't feel like your project is a good investment.
Ah.
So after we know that we have a good site, then we move to the next step where, and let me see if I'm covered all the questions here. Oh, before we get into the cost estimate and stuff, Kim, do you want to talk about the different ways that solar can be installed on at a homeowner's property? We were going to talk about the difference between ground, roof, and pole mount.
Sure. Everybody probably realizes you see them on the roofs all the time. So there's a roof mount that's usually the most cost effective. Sometimes not the most efficient because you're locked into the orientation and the slope of the roof. It's more cost effective because the structure's already there to put the panels on. Ground mount is a series of poles or posts in the ground, and generally it's a fixed angle, but you can orient it true south and locate it, with the best solar production in middle of the field if you have such a spot. And then there's pole mount, which is a ground mount installation as well, but it's on a single pole or multiple poles, and they're typically adjustable so you can tilt them seasonally. So they're a steeper pitch in the summer, and a winter, and a shallower pitch in the summer. The fourth option is a tracker, which I'm not a big fan of. The tracker, yeah, it's cool. It follows the sun. On paper, it makes a lot more, 25, 30% more energy for the same amount of panels. But my philosophy is anything that moves is eventually going to break down, and I tend to stay away from it. They cost more up front, but they produce more power per watt. So they end up looking on paper a little cheaper than maybe a ground mount. But I think in the long run, it's going to cost you because eventually you're going to have to fix something.
And I'm sorry, Kim, can you spell what you just said? Tractor mount?
Tracker, it tracks the sun.
Sure. Okay, tracker.
They go, the morning it's going to face the east, and then by the end of the day it faces west, and then and seasonally it does the tilt. So it's basically always 90 degrees to the sun, which is when you're going to make the most energy.
And they're really designed for a wide open field. But like Kim, I'm not a big fan of them either, because we've found that if you simply add 2 or 4 panels to your fixed array, you can benefit from that added power. If you're off grid, when you want to have a full curve of power throughout the day, a tracker is probably more useful, but for grid tied, it really isn't worth the extra money.
Agree.
I wanted to mention, just to back up for a second about what a solar installer does when you first call them being interested in solar. I want to give you an example of another report that is often used by installers. And this is one called the Solar Edge Design Report, and they use a satellite image of your home. They build it up into 3D. And this is that same garage that you saw the completed picture of earlier. And we were able to measure it from space and determine how many panels fit on there. Sometimes it's not 100% accurate. That's why obviously you got to go in the field sooner than later before you dial in the cost. But this is an easy way for a solar installer to give you a general estimate without coming out to your home. So I know that's a pretty common thing that folks will do. And then if the numbers sound enticing, then you move to the next step of having the installer come visit your house.
Are you ready to, Kim, as far as a couple of questions that were called in to me or asked by email was about snow on the panels being in this area of New Hampshire. What is the care of the panels in winter? Is there any special care?
Well, a lot of that's going to depend on the slope of the roof. If you have a 45-degree pitch, which would be a 12 pitch, probably all the way down to maybe a 7 or 8 pitch, most of the time the snow is going to slide off and you won't have much roof maintenance, snow maintenance or removal. Once you start getting flatter than that, 7, 6, and or 3 or 4 pitches, pretty flat, you could conceivably lose weeks or a month of production because of the snows on the roof, unless you physically take it off. I use a plastic roof rake, which probably most people say not to do, but I always use a roof rake to carefully take mine off. I mean, the panels are rated for 100 pounds per square foot of snow load, so they're pretty rugged. Just be careful. But there's roofs that are too high; it's just not practical to do it, and you just have to concede that maybe a week or a month of the year you're probably going to lose a little energy, but those that's going to be in December to probably February, where you're not making a whole heck of a lot of energy anyway. So don't lose a lot of sleep on it. It's not like you're losing the middle of the summer energy. So at the end of the day, it's not as a big deal as you think. It's just that it frustrates people that the sun's out and they could be making energy, but they're not because they're covered with snow.
And one of the things that people don't realize is that when a solar panel gets sun on it, it does warm up. Those electrons start getting busy and the panel warms. So once a corner of the array starts to melt, it will melt off eventually. But yeah, the lower pitch roofs commonly have snow on them. But as we all know, our winters vary so much, and we always have at least a couple of thaws throughout the winter that will clear those panels off. Similar to a metal roof. And one of the things we were asked to talk about pros and cons about putting solar on. And one thing we always remind people is when you put solar on your house, it immediately acts as though it's a metal roof. So that snow slides off onto anything that's underneath it. So if you have special bushes or a deck or it's the entryway of your house, you really have to be thinking about, do you want solar panels in that location? Because when it comes off and shakes the house and can come down with a real bang, especially if it's on the second floor. So something to think about before deciding where you want to put your panels on your home.
Yes, we have that experience when it all slides with the warming up of the day. We had another question about how long do the panels themselves last, the installation?
I can answer that.
Okay.
The warranty on the panels is it varies a little bit from manufacturers. Most of them are 25 years, some of them are 30, and that they'll still maintain anywhere between, produce anywhere between 80 and some manufacturers 86% of their nameplate power. So if you had a 300 watt panel in 25 years, it's still going to make 80 to 85, 86% of that same energy. In theory, they're probably going to last 40, 50 years. I know there's, like Gunnar, for if he's on, he can attest to it. He's had panels for 40, 50 years. They're still making energy, not as much as when they first started, but they're still producing power. Most manufacturers always have a workmanship warranty too, that the glass won't fade or the paint won't start coming off on the typically the black baked panels, the frames, I mean. But that's basically it. The warranties are pretty long in solar. And inverters range from central inverters from 10 to 12 years to micro inverters 25-year warranty. So there's pretty good warranties in pretty much all the equipment.
There is a chat message, since we're talking about engineering and structural objectives. Where can batteries be safely installed? When you were speaking earlier, I don't think you mentioned where this particular question, where they can be installed.
Where can panels be installed?
I'm sorry, so batteries. So we're kind of going back to batteries.
Okay. Yep, I'll let Kim take that one.
Batteries are heavy, so some of them are wall mount, some of them are sit on the floor. So obviously the structure wherever you put them is going to have to certainly be accounted for. I lost my train of thought.
Well, manufacturers do make battery racks, which is an added cost to your project, but it makes it a little more slick and clean in your basement and provides a nice disconnect for the electrician.
Right, and the other location they typically always want to be near the inverter. The further you start getting away from that, the larger the wire has to be, and you have voltage drop issues. And especially with almost everyone's going with lithium batteries now, which are increasing the cost but extending the life of them. They typically need to be in a 40 to 50 degree temperature. So it's not something you're probably going to put in your garage unless your garage is heated.
Right.
Unless you had something else to say, under engineering, you probably do have a lot more to say, especially with are there different types of panels. But I did have one question from chat that might be a little bit involved, but I think it's one that a lot of people have. It's very specific. How can you tell us how many panels for a mini split, a freezer, hot water heater? You already mentioned that more and more people do want to have access, electrical access for their EVs. So those three items, though.
It's very, very tricky to estimate future electrical load. When it comes to space heating, there is a BTU and kilowatt hour conversion that you can do. From my experience, from the homes that I know are fully heating with mini splits, they're ranging from anywhere from 12,000 kilowatt hours to 20,000 kilowatt hours a year. These are efficient, pretty well insulated homes that are heating only with mini splits. As far as an electric car, I think the equation is 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour. Either that or it's the other way around. But
it's the other way. It's the other way around.
The other way around. So say that, Kim.
It's like mine is like 3.3. Mine is 3.3 kilowatt hours per mile.
Per mile, right. So you can look
no,
at
no, actually, now I just did it backwards. It's it's 3 to, it depends on the vehicle, but it's 3. You can go 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which seems incredibly efficient. But so the amount of energy you're going to need to do that is obviously going to be determined on how far you drive a year, and if you have a hybrid or an all-electric vehicle, to try to make those calculations.
So a lot of times it comes down to your budget, how much space you have on your roof. Oftentimes, it's those things versus what exactly my future electrical load may be. When I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but the New Hampshire Electric Co-op net metering program favors installations that are smaller than your actual electrical load because they keep track of every exported bit of solar that goes out onto the grid. But you are wise to figure out your future load and try to estimate it best you can. But I think many people are very surprised to see just how many solar panels and the space they take up to do a project as big as 15 or 20 kW. So I'm going to continue on here, just go over some basics and we'll come back to questions. I'm going to show you a sample invoice for this particular project that had 14 panels and kind of go over with you what the incentives were and what the savings were. And then I'm going to show you how those savings are generated, and we'll go back to the Pathfinder report to see if her bill actually generated what the Pathfinder report said it would. So for 14 panels, almost a 5 kW system, this project cost $16,398. And one of the things I wanted to explain is that solar is commonly talked about in per watt installation costs. So in this case, the project was 4,760 watts. So you take the project total and divide it by that, and you get your per watt cost. The smaller the project, the higher the per watt cost is going to be, because the same amount of work goes in from installing 2 panels or 20 panels when it comes to the work between the array and the electrical panel, whether it's a 2 kW inverter or a 10 kW inverter, the amount of labor is very similar. So there are costs, there are lots of savings as you go up in price, as you go up in your solar size. Here in New Hampshire, the state gives you 20 cents per watt up to $1,000. I wish it was higher. It used to be much higher. But at least it's something. So you take that 4,760 watts, multiply it by 20 cents, and you get what your rebate is. Most projects are 5 kW or more and hit that $1,000 rebate very easily. And then now through the end of next year, the IRS tax credit remains in place, and it's 26% of the total project cost. And in this case, $4,200. That IRS tax credit is just crucial in making solar affordable for many middle income families. The savings here is estimated. It's always a little tricky to dial this in perfectly, but we estimated this one at 14 cents per kilowatt hour. And we estimated the renewable energy credits at 174. And later on during this conversation, if people want to talk about what a renewable energy credit is, I'd be happy to talk with you about that, but it could take over the rest of the presentation. But essentially, that's an added value for your solar energy that you get paid either quarterly or annually, depending on who the renewable energy credit aggregator is. So if you're in the co-op territory, and you're buying selling your renewable energy credits to them, they pay you annually, either through a credit on your bill or a check. So what I want to show you, in order to figure out what your savings are, you would be looking at your New Hampshire Electric Co-op electric bill. A couple of people mentioned they're in homes with older systems. One thing I want to make sure people realize is that if your system was installed before somewhere around 2014, 15, I can't quite remember the date, you are in what they call the below the cap net metering program, where you're getting 1 kilowatt hour of credit for every kilowatt hour of solar you produce. So if you're on this call and your electric bill does not show export, and you have solar, if it does not show these exported credits, you're in what they call the below the cap program. So if you expand your system, you want to be careful, because it would put you into now this new program of a less advantageous net metering program with the co-op. So we're looking at the same house. This is their bill from August. And if we go back to our Pathfinder report, we will check to see how we did when we went on this, did the solar assessment. So for starters, we're going to look at PVN. So when you get your first electric bill after it's net metered, you're going to see this new meter added to your electric bill. And this shows you how many kilowatt hours your solar has produced. And it's essentially your solar odometer. And you have an extra meter on your home called a renewable energy credit meter or solar generation meter. And that's where this number is kept track of. And the utility knows that instantaneously. So her system made 643 kilowatt hours in the month of August. And we're going to take a look at the Pathfinder again and see how well it estimated it. Does anyone want to tell me, if they want to unmute, how many kilowatt hours did this project generate? You would find it in the actual shaded AC energy. And how much did this project generate in the month of August? It's under actual shaded energy, which means this is what this site will make.
So people can't unmute if you can see it. For me, the screen is quite small. It's
754 rounded.
So the number would be here, 673. And if the array was in a field pointed true south, it would have generated 683. So only 10 kilowatt hour difference. But, and I wanted to point this out because it's important for people to have an idea of what their system will generate and what you can expect from it. So, so the report said 673, but when she got her electric bill in, it only made 643. So, so it's about 4% less than the report. The solar Pathfinder report and some of the other reports installers use, they usually guarantee it within plus or minus 10%. So we certainly fall within that 10%. And just briefly, I wanted to share with you what a net metering bill looks like when you get solar. It looks a lot more confusing than your original bill did. And it includes the solar electricity that was exported onto the grid, the power that your house did not use. And you see that in your credits where 1181, 322, 487, 2425. They credit you for all the different electricity rates for the solar electricity that exported. But you also get another value. You get the value of the solar that was used right there at your house. We call that behind the meter, the solar used behind the meter. This you're not going to see on your bill. So a lot of times folks will just add up these credits and say, I'm not getting the bill savings I thought I would. What you have to do is do a little math, and I won't go into that here. I'm happy to send this to anyone who's interested. And you have to figure out, well, what solar power did I use at the house, and what is that value? And that value varies based on your the retail rate. The New Hampshire Electric Co-op changes their rate at least twice a year, sometimes 3, more commonly 2. And every 6 months, they post it on their website, and they also post the net metering rate. So people that get solar, they'll find themselves interested in how that rate changes depending on the season. So it's normally about 60%, sometimes 65% of the retail cost. So are there any questions about net metering? This is how the co-op program works. The Eversource program is actually a little more advantageous for net metering because they true it up monthly. As you can see here, The co-op is noting every little bit of exported solar. The second it goes onto the line, they know about it. But Eversource trues it up monthly, so you have more time during the month to use up that solar credit and have less solar being exported because it's trued up monthly, and therefore you're gaining financially a little more through Eversource's net metering program. And Kim, do you agree with that?
Yeah, the Eversource projects always come out, payback is faster for two reasons, because the rates are higher and that's what you base everything on. And their net metering is more favorable than the co-ops, which was always kind of surprising because the co-op was pretty pro solar, but I think they could have done a little better on their net metering, but it is what it is.
And one of the things we can all advocate for is that, they give better net metering rates, not drop it down that 40%. Because when they first started doing the program, it was actually closer to 30% less than the retail rate. And it seems to be dropping a little bit. So we could advocate for a stronger net metering rate to encourage more people to install solar so their payback is stronger. Most projects these days have about a 10 to 11 year payback. When you take the cost of the project less the incentives divided by your annual financial savings.
Any other questions right now about current taxes and rebates? I think the federal rebate is at 26% right now, and that's due to go up in 2023. I mean,
Okay.
sorry, from 26 to 22%.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it's 26% through the end of next year, and then it drops to 22%. Then it drops to 10%, and then that's it for residential tax credits.
wow.
For commercial, it remains at 10%. So
remember-
next year is a good year to do this.
If there's anything else for this, I don't know if you'd want a question about the costs right now before we go on to programs for lower income families. And I had a couple of pieces of information for that. Did anyone have a question about costs and benefits right now?
I just wanted to mention just quickly, Sandra, maybe just say a little bit more. When you were talking to us about our system and sort of talking about behind the meter usage and sort of how you sort of work out your week, when you do the laundry and when you do, turn the dishwasher on or whatever else, to try to use as much of your own power. That was really kind of an interesting way to think about it, and certainly something that we've been, very actively doing since we moved into our house. And I think that's a good topic to mention to folks.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Ian. One of the reasons the New Hampshire Electric Co-op designed their net metering program to be this way is they want members to use the solar energy on site because that's beneficial to the entire grid stability. So one way that you can use more power behind the meter is choosing to do your laundry and your dishes on a sunny day, or charging your electric car on a right in the middle of the sunny day when your solar array is making the most solar power. So if you're home and it's at noon, that's a great time to use your washing machine, but still put those clothes out on the dryer though. I mean, on the clothesline.
Warden, did you want to unmute and ask your question about the performance factor based on sunny days?
Yeah, hi. I thought it might be interesting for people to hear, like you have an estimate of performance is it based on sunny days, or does it take into account the local weather, and by what percent do you see a drop in performance on a cloudy day and a rainy day like yesterday here in Sandwich versus a full sun, blue sky day?
So these type of solar analysis reports do take weather into consideration. They take the actual local weather because they ask the location of the array. So it is based on local weather, and that's why they do that 10% margin as well. just knowing how much weather varies within a year, and it doesn't vary even as much as 10%. Kim, do you want to speak to that question?
Yeah, it's, well, I think you pretty much covered everything. I usually use I mean, the PV watts that pretty much everybody uses for these calculations is based on 30 years of history, in the state and throughout the towns in the state. So it's an average, and every year they're going to be a little higher, a little lower, but it comes out pretty close. Sometimes you make more than your estimate, sometimes you make out less, but and if you look at it month by month, sometimes you see some huge discrepancies, but by the time you figure it out by the end of the year, it all kind of averages out, and you're pretty be surprised how much it's fairly consistent from year to year.
And that's why we're big believers in solar energy over wind, because of the consistency of that we see in these reports. We can really rely on that solar a lot more than wind as far as consistency goes.
Sorry, I know I'm supposed to raise my hand. I have one more quick question. The rates that are listed, the factors that are multiplied by the exported and imported power numbers, do those change every month, or are they fixed for a year, or how often does NHEC or other providers tweak those rates? Or is that something that are subject to change without notification or anything?
Well, they usually do notify, but they can change them when they want to. For instance, last year, they actually changed them 3 times. And the 3rd time was to lower the rate because natural gas was so inexpensive during 2020. So they usually give people a heads up. You commonly hear it on the news when the utilities are going to change their rate. They commonly do it around the same time. But I don't know about Eversource, but New Hampshire Electric Co-op has a rate sheet right on their website. And you can look right at it, and it tells you, net metering, what your exported rate will be. It tells you what your retail rate is, whether you're commercial or residential. Up here in your bill, it'll see where it says residential here. It'll tell you what to look for in that rate sheet. So, but yes, they can change it whenever they want, but there are regulations around it. But it could go up 10 cents a kilowatt hour tomorrow. I mean, it really can fluctuate drastically.
Len, you had an earlier chat question, and I think the second question you have refers back to that. Has your question been answered pretty well when we're talking about panels and the
Well, I
amount?
just like to get more of a sense. So, and I know it's hard, but let's just say I had a freezer. How many panels would it take to run a freezer in my house? Or how many panels would it take to run a hot water heater? Something more specific, so we can. Or don't you ever think in those terms, Kim and
Yeah, if I could, I'll take that. I don't. I have a lot of people say I want to put solar panels offset a specific appliance, and that's not really the way it works. You're putting solar panels on your house to offset, maybe 50%, 75%, or 100% of your energy use, not necessarily 1 or 2 appliances. Granted, I know if you add 1 appliance, you want to know, okay, how much more do I need to calculate for that? You can go online and get some fairly accurate, or whatever appliance you buy usually tells you how much energy you can expect it's going to take a year. And it's easy math for an installer to figure out how many panels they have to add to accommodate that appliance. But it's not a a one line answer, because the shading, the azimuth, and the tilt of the roof all factor into how much that one panel is going to produce. So don't think in terms of one appliances. You think of the whole picture. you're putting an array that's putting energy into your whole electrical system, and you're using that energy, but probably 2/3 of the energy you produce over the course of a year, you actually export it. You probably only use about 1/3 of that energy. So but at the end of the day, you've probably produced as much, if you designed a system to offset say a 6,000 kilowatt use throughout the course of the year, you've produced 6,000 kilowatt hours. You just didn't produce it exactly when you needed it. But
Right.
over the course of the year, that's what you produced.
And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is it's not just the energy that appliance is using. The startup electrical needs of things like a water pump and a refrigerator. That makes it harder to determine exactly the electrical characteristics. And so, especially with off-grid homes, that's a big deal to figure out what that optimal or what that maximum amount that you need if all loads were starting up at the same time. And that's why well pumps are really hard to cover by small battery backup systems because of that surge of power needed. So it's a little more complicated than that. But I do want to put a shout out to a product called the Energy Sense. And if you truly want to know what your electricity usage is, it's an amazing piece of equipment that you put into your electrical panel. Do-it-yourselfers can do it fairly easily, if not an electrician can. And it senses the electrical current, I'm not sure if that's the right word, of all your appliances. It'll tell you how much your TV uses, your refrigerator, your freezer. It's all on this app. And in fact, I just noticed the New Hampshire Electric Co-op is running a rebate for that piece of equipment. And here at Paray, we're actually going to have a test committee of a half dozen homeowners, if anyone is interested, to try it out. And we're thinking that you don't really need it on your home for more than a month. You'll learn, get to know what all your appliances use, and then you can pass that piece of equipment on to another homeowner. But it's called the Energy Sense. And we have a couple of members with it on their homes, and they're learning quite a bit from it.
I did hear from a couple of people who aren't here tonight. I think they wanted to listen to the replay that we're asking about programs for lower income individuals and families. And I just posted on the chat the LIHEAP, it's called LIHEAP program, which opens on October 1st. So I posted the website that people can look up. And I will share it with the two other people who contacted me. So that is a very good program to know about. I was just reading where Representative Annie Custer had suggested that individuals can give their carbon credits to lower income families in a community. So if Mark and I are earning additional credit for energy that we have sent out to the grid, then we are going to reap that back as renewable energy credits, and we could give those credits to someone else in the community. So that's really a nice thing to know, since this is going to be a hard winter, I hear, that everybody's hearing about with increased energy, oil prices, etc. I also know about the Energy Bill Cruncher, but I will share that with anybody who gets in touch with me. If there are no other questions right now, there might be at the end. We were going to review some of the common mistakes by homeowners when installing solar. So Kim and Sandra might have some points about that.
I'm going to stop my screen share here so we can see more of each other. Common mistakes. I'm having a hard time with that one because the ones I'm most familiar with are the ones that we've installed. So I think probably the biggest mistake is, and I don't think solar installers are making this mistake anymore, but putting your array up a little too high so the snow catches on the shingles below. That would be something that new solar installers may not know that trick right off the bat. You want the snow to be able to shed and not get caught up on the shingles down below. And then the other issue of not being careful about where they are installed because of that snow shed onto special bushes or front pathways into the house. Those are two that come to mind. I think probably the other one that I don't see happen as much anymore, but I've seen people install solar, have someone install solar, and then seek the permission from the utility. So a really important thing to do, even if it's a do-it-yourself project, you want to submit your interconnection application, get your project approved by a utility before you even move any further, because there could be some electrical upgrades that you wouldn't know unless you let the utility know you're doing your project. So I saw a few homeowners get surprised by that not happening first, and then they realized they had to upgrade their transformer for another $3,000. So you want to figure out uncover all the costs you can before you put a large deposit down on your project.
Tim, do you have some thoughts about what you've seen?
Yeah, we got a little cheat sheet that you gave us here. One thing is, though your installer will probably give you a heads up on it, you want to consider the condition of your roof. If your shingles are 20, 25 years old, you're going to be putting something on, at least for a roof mount installation, you'll be putting something on a roof that's going to be there for 25 to maybe 50 years. So you probably might want to re-roof your roof before you do your solar panels. You got to know, get multiple quotes. That's always a good idea, or be comfortable with your installer. Not taking advantage of the incentives on this list, but your installer should be able to keep you pretty abreast of what's available. Pretty much it's and I want to correct something you said before. You mentioned there's a tax rebate. It's a tax credit, and so be careful with that. If some retired people or some people don't pay, a few people don't pay federal income tax, so you wouldn't be getting any tax credit if you don't pay any income tax. So you have to have tax liability in order to be able to take advantage of that tax credit. It's not a rebate. The state is a rebate, which is taxable. And undersizing the array, sometimes that's a matter of cost or physical roof space. I always say that no one's ever complained that I put too much on the roof, because you can always add more electrical, change that gas appliance to electrical appliance to absorb some of that extra energy.
I also saw somewhere about warranties, and I couldn't remember the context, except that that homeowners don't always remember that they have one. And what is that usually?
Yeah, I can take that. It varies a little bit from manufacturer. Most central inverters are 10-year warranty. SolarEdge, I believe, is 12 years. Most microinverters are 25 years. Most optimizers are 25 years. Most solar panels are 25 years. A few are 30. The rest of after that, it's hardware and rails and wires is pretty mechanical stuff that lasts indefinitely. Although what does vary a little bit from manufacturer to manufacturer, and especially with the solar panels and the inverters, you got to be careful. Some manufacturers will pass over the warranty to if you sell your home to the new homeowner, and some won't. So that's be something to keep in mind, especially if you think you might be selling in 5 or 10 years, because these warranties are a long time. So it's just something to think about.
I know there was a question about whether a solar array adds to your property taxes. And I believe in Sandwich that you have to do a property tax exemption in order for your new solar project to not be part of your home assessment. That's not the case in every town. Some towns just don't value it at all, but most towns will will value it, but then exempt you from it, so it's on their books. That's not the case in every town. So if you're not from Sandwich and you're thinking of installing solar, check in with your town hall to see if they exempt the solar value of the solar array from your house assessment.
Oh, I just thought of one. We planted trees, and just before we decided to do solar, not thinking about it, and we pruned that tree a whole lot. So definitely consider that too, and put your trees somewhere else. But a lot of tree lovers in this town, and they do grow very fast.
And the other advice I would give people is, it's okay to wait until after your solar installation if there's a tree that you were thinking may need to go down, because most arrays are monitored and you can watch it closely as to what time of day the panels are being shaded by trees. So I would say live with your installation before going crazy with tree removal, because the solar installer can guesstimate how certain trees removed can help your system. But I would say don't go crazy with it, and see how your system produces before taking down that lovely tree that you can't bear to be without.
So does anyone, we could open up any questions that you might have from the beginning of the discussion. If anyone has anything else, we'll give you a minute or two. In the meantime, I posted a list of solar contracting installers that is on the chat list, and I'd be glad to send it to anyone. These are installers who have participated in the first and the second program, and we really appreciate your time. So those are all listed in the chat board. I did get,
Peggy, I'm not seeing those in the chat. Can you repost it?
sure, they're a little further up. I posted it much earlier. Whoops.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either.
Oh, okay. I would be glad. I just undid something though here. Okay, so I'll do that. Any questions as I repost that? Go ahead.
Hi, it's Ron Albert. If you happen to own a small field or an old pasture or something, I'm wondering about commercial sort of installations, the way you might actually go into a small business of providing solar. And this is of interest to me. I went to Google one time and asked, how much land does it take to erect enough solar panels to produce a megawatt of electricity? And I was surprised at what, to my, ears, seemed a small amount of land, about 2.5 acres. And I've done that a couple of times, and it varies a little bit. But it seems like if you've got a field or a lawn, or a couple of acres or so, you can produce a damn lot of electricity. Are there programs where perhaps the utilities are encouraging people who might have a field or an open space to do exactly that? I went further with Google, and how much is a megawatt of electricity? It's about anywhere from enough to supply 700 to 1,000 houses with their electricity. And I know also over in Freiburg, I think it was CNP over there, they put on, I can't remember the numbers, but it sort of jived with what I was being told in my Google search, that it doesn't take a huge amount of land to produce a whole lot of electricity. Do they encourage that sort of, you're a gentleman farmer, instead of growing beets or apples or whatever, electricity, Are there programs to capture the landowners' interest?
I can speak to that somewhat. The New Hampshire Electric Co-op is moving in the direction of encouraging more local solar energy large projects. I'm on a committee where we're working on a plan for the co-op to reduce their carbon footprint as far as it comes to their electricity purchasing and within their own facilities. And supporting local solar projects is a big one on the list if we want to truly reduce the carbon footprint. So I think we'll be seeing more of that. They certainly do PPAs currently with solar developers, but not nearly enough. There is a commercial company in Holderness. You may all know Ted Van Sant, New England Commercial Solar Services. He would be an excellent person to talk to if you have a field and you're interested in developing it. That is something that he does. It's tricky in the co-op territory, again, because of net metering, to do something like group net metering, because the value isn't there for the cost it takes to install. But selling it directly to the utility, I think we're going to see a bigger demand for that in the next year, 2 years. But I definitely would recommend you talk to Ted Van Sant from New England Commercial Solar Services, because he is a pro at all of that.
I want to have, just get one question clear here that he said. So 2.5 acres, which a lot of us have meadows that are much bigger than that. We could service 700 houses?
I don't know if I'm not an engineer. I don't know if I'm reading that correctly, but that's how I interpreted it. And it seemed to jive with what they were doing over in Freiburg. And I think this is an issue for some of the land trusts around here. I know that some of the members here are involved with different land trusts, which have hundreds or thousands of acres. Not all of it are equal value for climate resiliency or habitat, or some of it is former parking lots, or not that much value, but something that the trusts may want to look at as a sort of a revenue source, and also to help the climate consideration. It was brought up.
I think that household estimate was high, because most households use around 8,000 kilowatt hours annually.
Mm-hmm.
So a megawatt, if I'm doing my math correct, would be more like 125 households.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Okay.
Well, I didn't factor it by climate or geography. That was just Google. How many acres does it take? So it probably was heavily weighted. The answer is probably heavily weighted by a lot of solar panels down in Georgia and Texas. Maybe it doesn't work. I take it back.
But I do think as a community, we need to be encouraging solar installations, local solar energy, putting more local solar energy on our grid, and encouraging the co-op to buy that power as part of the energy source that's fueling all of our homes. So I think there'll be some opportunities for some advocacy in the coming year or two for this very thing. But it is happening now, just not enough.
One other thing I wanted to add. So let's just say it is 100 homes and it's 2.5 acres.
Mm-hmm.
That means if 100 people chipped in, to buy that 2.5 acres and put the solar panels on it, it could be a bargain rather than build a solar panel on your house. Kim, would it be or wouldn't it be? It's kind of like, saving because you have a bigger quantity of people investing.
Well, economy of scale is always, a good thing in solar. The problem is you're getting into a lot of different things there. When you start doing larger arrays, the credit they give you is a lot less than what we're talking about now for homes. And I've never done jobs that big. I've done 100 kW. That's about it. But once you start getting into those larger jobs, I've always had a hard time trying to see how the math works to make them viable, because sometimes you're only down to 5, 6, 7 cents a kilowatt hour for all the energy produced, because those big arrays aren't consuming energy. So it's not like you're saving energy at 15 or 18 cents a kilowatt hour. You're just exporting energy. So now you're a wholesale producer. And until recently, I haven't really kept up with what the state's been doing with some of these larger arrays. I think they finally allowed some of the larger ones to get in, but I knew Sununu was always fighting it. Most power companies aren't huge advocates of solar. They think it's a competitor, or Sununu always thinks it's raising rates. But I've always had a hard time making the numbers make sense, and I've seen a lot of stories going around that, oh, we're going to do a big solar field here, or we do a big solar field on this town or that town, and they just never seem to materialize, because by the time they didn't crunch on all the numbers, the numbers just aren't, they're just not favorable enough.
How big is that array that the co-op has in Bolton? I understand it's the largest array.
Yeah, it's 2 megawatts.
2 megawatts, and they own it.
And they have battery storage. I forget how much they put in, but they put in the biggest advantage for the power company is the battery storage, because that offsets that peak, that huge demand they get nailed for it. Between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night, when everybody comes home, turns everything on, or air conditioning loads. When they can keep down that demand, they save millions of dollars. I mean, a day. It's just huge, and that was one of their main objectives of the solar array, and certainly by putting the batteries in. And that's
how large is that parcel? How large is that plot of land? Do you happen to know, Kim?
Oh, I forget. I toured it. I can't remember how big they told me it was. It's pretty good size. I don't remember how many panels it is anymore either. It's a nice job, and it's in the battery storage is a nice touch.
I'm seeing in chat that someone doesn't see the list of, I guess it's Jerry, who doesn't see the list. Does everyone else see the list of solar contractors?
No, I still can't see it, Peggy.
I'm seeing it twice. I'm not sure. Does anyone see it?
Are you choosing everyone to send a message?
I see it. Let me see if I can copy it and then repaste it in there.
Yeah, it's to everyone.
Yeah, I've got it. Hold on. I'm going to copy and repaste it.
You know what? Somehow I did send it to Leonard. Sorry. Okay, so that's that. Also, someone else said that they would love to contact.
You all should have it now, by the way.
Yeah, and Sandra's information is in that list. It's the second one down on the list for the person who wants to contact Sandra.
Yep.
Hope you don't mind.
Happy to communicate with anybody directly about any further questions or joining the organization, and anything you want to know, I'm happy to share what I know.
Great, thanks. And that was a great question, Ron, about community solar. And thank you too, Kim. I just wanted in closing to.
Dick Knox has a question, I think.
Dick,
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to ask whether this is an appropriate time to ask about it, because I wasn't at the earlier session, so maybe this was covered. I want to know whether anybody here has any knowledge about hybrid systems. That is to say, a home that's partly on grid and partly off grid. That's really what we're trying to figure out, because our installation from 2015, which is below the cap, is not providing the kind of proportion of our need that we thought we were going to get. We have a very hyper insulated, highly Energy Star rated home that's heated with heat pumps, and somehow or other we didn't get the solar array that services our needs. So now we don't want to give up the below the cap advantage, and I'm wondering whether it's possible or feasible or advisable to do a kind of a hybrid system, so that we can keep below the cap and also provide for our close to our total needs, if not actually all of our total needs, So I don't know, tell me this is not an appropriate question for this forum.
I can speak to that, and Kim probably can too. The only way you could save your below the cap net metering status is if you took loads completely off of your grid and your house grid and produce that power separately through a battery system. As long as that power is in your coming from your electrical panel, even if you had a hybrid system, if you're adding any more solar panels, it would kick you out of that program.
Yeah, we understand that. And that's why we're wondering whether we could segregate the power generated from our solar array, our existing solar array, that's the below the cap part, and then supplement it with an off the grid system to service the non-heat pump usage.
Right. So to set up your house for the off grid portion of that electrical load would be a huge undertaking. And at that point, I'd recommend to not worry about being in the below the cap for the cost that it would take to separate certain loads into an off-grid portion of your house. That's a very big undertaking.
So it'd be too expensive. It would be uneconomic.
Correct.
Absolutely. Kim, do you agree with that?
Yeah, without a doubt, that's not what you want to do. It would just be, it cost you so much more. I mean, all you're talking about, is you could probably add a half dozen more panels would offset the cost of, what you're getting hit on for that, below the cap and above the cap problem that you have right now, which is a drop in the bucket compared to what you would pay if you're going to do a battery hybrid system, which would be a nightmare to maintain, and you just don't want to go there.
It's an unfortunate trap that we're in.
The one thing you can look at is your inverter size may allow for more panels. So as long as you don't change your inverter size, you can put a little more PV power behind the system. But if it's an older system, that could get tricky, matching new panels and old panels in the same array. That's tricky. So, but it'd be worth looking at whether your inverter can handle any more panels.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much detail, but our inverter limit is not going to meet our needs.
Okay.
So we'll have to figure that out.
I'd recommend adding a new array, a new inverter. You can add a new array and inverter to an old system.
Mm-hmm. A lot of money either way.
I have it again.
Oops.
Every time I open my browser, Google, there's all these articles that abstracts they want you to take a look at, and I see frequently talking about new types of panels, a new composition of panels with words I can't quite pronounce. Perovista. I don't know how to pronounce the damn things, but it seems like every week they're announcing some new breakthrough. Is that all just marketing baloney, or is there new technology? Where are we on the new technology for the panels? How much more efficient are they? And should we maybe pause before committing, so that we might take advantage of newer technologies, buy now or buy later when there's something better? Where does the technology stand on these panels?
Kim, do you want to take that one?
I was trying to pass the buck to you on that one. Every year panels get slightly more efficient. When I first started 12 years ago, they were around 200 watts. Now they're up to 400 watts. Prices come down drastically. There have been talk for years that someone's got a new panel coming out, but I've never seen anything yet that's been that dramatic that really you should wait. How long are you gonna wait? By the time you wait 5 years, how much energy did you lose by not investing in solar now? So it's hard to say. I don't have a crystal ball. And I have to be honest, I haven't really paid that much attention to it. You probably know more about some of that newer stuff than I do, but I kind of use what's on the market now and what if it's the right price range.
Yeah, and there are different levels of panels that cost a lot more money that claim higher efficiency. But the most common panels, your Hanwha, your Trina, that are 370 watts for a 60 cell panel, they perform really well. So we don't tend to experiment much with types of panels. You have your bifacial panel. When you're doing a ground mount where it receives some power from reflection from the backside of the panels. I think that's an interesting concept, but they commonly cost a little more. But we've had just such good, consistent results from the 60 cell basic, moderately priced solar panel that we haven't felt a need to look elsewhere.
Well, I'd like to also say that we've been really happy with ours. We've added a few things and a few drawers to our load. So we are looking for a couple more panels. But several people I've talked to in the neighborhood have really been very happy with what they have. And I think in closing, it's past 8:30 now. Why do we need electricity, or why solar? Why solar electricity? New Hampshire rates are the fourth. Certainly other energy sources are going to be more expensive than already are. We're seeing that this winter. The solar can completely eliminate, depending on the size of the array, or greatly reduce your electrical bill, which in turn pays off the installation. We're just about, after 7 years, finished paying for ours. It does protect against rising energy costs, I mentioned. It does increase the property value. And in my research, I saw that New Hampshire property taxes do not go up, that it didn't talk about towns being different, that the state of New Hampshire, the taxes aren't allowed to go up, and that might be a couple of years old. So that is worth researching some more. It works to power, again, if you if you're putting enough panels on, the fact that we can be going more and more towards EVs is a great benefit. And it most importantly protects the environment by decreasing fossil fuels. So I think whether it's industrial, business, or residential, we definitely need to see a lot more solar. And we very much thank you for your interest.
So Lisa had her hand up for a
Sandra
while.
and Kim.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. Lisa had her hand up for a while. Lisa, you want to jump in real quickly though?
I've also got mine up.
I don't see that either. Just spoke. Helen? Okay, so Lisa, if you want to go quickly with your question.
I'm not sure it's Lisa. So Jean has a question. I'm sort of a local health policy wonk, but there's a lot of policy questions in there about how New Hampshire state government, how the electric co-op and Eversource, and how our government, state government, are approaching this issue. So what do we need to be doing about that?
Well, if you're not already a member of Clean Energy New Hampshire, they are the largest advocacy for clean energy in the state. They do a wonderful job with keeping people up to date on what's happening in the legislature and when people need to get to public hearings. So I highly recommend getting involved with that organization and getting on their email list. There's always opportunities for advocacy. So I think it's just staying on top of the information and making your voice heard. New Hampshire Electric Co-op, their board meetings are public. And it's a wonderful opportunity to advocate for the co-op to decrease their carbon footprint and purchase more renewable energy for, again, the power that we all buy. And so I think the more they hear that from members We did work with the co-op about a year ago now to do a climate survey to New Hampshire Electric Co-op members to show them, and we were hoping the results would come back positively, but to show them that their membership is concerned about climate change and wants climate action. And the survey showed that over 70% of their members, it was sent to 2,000 indiscriminately. It was a professional survey, and 70% showed concerned or somewhat concerned or very concerned with climate. So they were moved by those results. And so I think everyone just needs to continue to speak out and make their voice heard. So obviously our leaders hear it, but to look for those opportunities and go out of your way to do so.
Thanks very much, Sandra. We'll say goodnight. It's past our time to stop at 8:30. But thanks to everyone for coming, and especially Kim and Sandra. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Keep up the good work.
Organized.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.